I suppose some of the examples would come from countries that perhaps you don't necessarily think of. If you take Korea as an example, in the 1950s, Korea was one of the poorest countries on the planet. It had just emerged from a devastating war, North Korea-South Korea war, and the country was frankly a basket case. The government came up with a plan, a 30-year vision for the country, which was then broken down into 5-year segments, and the country actually moved forward around that plan. The big focus for the country was infrastructure. Infrastructure and education were probably the two most significant elements of that plan. The President's view: you need to actually build the roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, clinics, etc. You need the power stations in order to electrify the country, and you need an educated workforce to actually take the plan forward. Those were probably the two main features of that plan. The plan was actually driven out of the President's office, with the President being heavily involved in the implementation. And I think one of the core things that they did very early on was to say, how are we going to fund this? Be very clear about the funding, and be very clear then about the priorities to actually take it forward. I suppose the second example where I've worked would be Jamaica, where the country was very much in the 1990s through into the early 2000s had a very aggressive plan for how it wanted to spread prosperity among the population and improve the public services. But at that time was also up against IMF targets in that the country couldn't borrow anymore. So they actually had to do more with less. And that drove them not just to say the plan is about expanding what we do and expanding investment, but there was a second feature to the plan, and that was value for money and impact. And it was about saying that for every dollar we spend, we need to show that that money is actually being effectively spent and is actually delivering against the planned purpose. So at a time when they were actually looking to expand the program and they were looking to deliver more effectively, they were also looking to reduce costs in some areas, and that led to some fairly innovative and radical solutions. They introduced a concept of executive agencies. In other words, there are certain aspects of government which deliver services that actually can charge for those services, and by doing so you free them from the constraints of the central budget, and you can use those resources that you've freed to plough back into health and social services, health, hospitals, social services. So that was a fairly comprehensive program. Again, one of the other features which is common with the first example I've given you was that there was a PMU, Prime Minister's Delivery Unit, established in the Prime Minister's office. I was the lead advisor to that, and we were looking at what we call strategic and functional reviews of each of the main line ministries. And then the Prime Minister's office, led out of the Cabinet Office, were involved in actually monitoring the effective implementation of that programme, making sure that accountability was clear within the line ministries, making sure that resources were allocated to those budgets in the different ministries, and that delivery was actually taking place. The third example would be the UK, where Prime Minister Blair established what was called the Prime Minister's Delivery Unit in the UK. And I think that was seen again to be a significant model of how you can actually take forward reform. Again, small delivery unit, very clear tools, very clear accountability devices, and regular performance monitoring and support using a series of different tools. I think that methodology has subsequently been exported, and I know DFID, the UK aid agency, have actually been using that approach in Pakistan to help to actually with the implementation of the national plan in Pakistan, particularly with a focus on education.